The Ukraine case. Representatives and accomplices of the anti-cult movement made a series of outrageous statements about Ukrainians and Ukraine as a whole. These defamatory statements began to surface many years before the military conflict between Ukraine and Russia, as a preparatory stage of propaganda aimed at shaping public opinion, injecting and ingraining necessary narratives in people's minds. These statements have only intensified and taken on more radical forms now that the military conflict is in its active phase.
And in general, the situation with mass hysteria we observe in Ukraine resembles, in essence, what happens in cults.
One of the first to spread the idea that Ukraine is afflicted by Satanism, which is linked to Nazism, was Vladimir Rogatin, a corresponding member of the European Federation of Centers of Research and Information on Sectarianism, FECRIS. By a remarkable coincidence, this individual conducts his activities in Ukraine, while also being an active mouthpiece for Russian anti-cultists. In 2014, he began explaining the cause of the Euromaidan by attributing it to the harmful influence of new religious movements. He added that they were also behind what happened in Ukraine in 2004, namely, the Orange Revolution.
Discrimination has reached a qualitatively different level. We must acknowledge that it wasn't just Orthodox Christians and Uniates. There were also neo-pagans, Baptists, and various movements involved in the Maidan protests.
This completely aligned with the opinions of FECRIS Vice President Alexander Dvorkin, who had previously made similar statements.
We saw that the first Maidan was driven entirely by neo-Pentecostals, who were the main active forces. The second Maidan had a more complex religious component involving not only cults, but also the Uniate Church, which belongs to the Roman Catholic Church. However, Ukrainian Uniates are a special case, and in many ways, in general, they have, you could say, a cultist mindset as well. Well, there were also neo-pagans and Scientologists, too.
Similar sentiments were expressed by the Ratsir's Vice President Alexander Novopashin.
So, what did the Ukrainians do? Or rather, their American curators and mentors? They began to direct these destructive cults and organizations. Remember the saying, if you can't beat them, lead them. Surprisingly, it was the American intelligence agencies who first started fighting the cults. But they failed. Then, they decided to try to control the cult leaders through bribery, intimidation, and so on. It worked. The same thing was done in Ukraine. Now, totalitarian sects, that is, destructive cults, while continuing their main destructive activities, have also started working for the Ukrainian regime. Neo-Pentecostals and neo-pagans took an active part in the Orange Revolutions, for example, on the Maidan. There, they gained considerable combat experience and can now be used to organize and sustain street riots in Russia.
In the same 2014 interview, Rogatin stated,
in Ukraine, there is a growing influence and presence of various satanic cults. According to various estimates, there are more than 100 satanic groups operating in our country, with a total of about 2,000 followers.
Subsequently, this rhetoric of Satanism supposedly engulfing Ukraine was picked up by high-ranking Russian government officials. They used similar narratives to justify the war as a necessity to de-Satanize Ukraine. Thus, the Assistant Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, Alexei Pavlov, stated,
I believe that, with the continuation of the special military operation, it becomes more and more urgent to carry out the desatanization of Ukraine, or, as the head of the Chechen Republic Ramzan Kadyrov aptly put it, its complete de-shaitanization.
Pavlov also mentioned the Church of Satan, which has allegedly spread throughout Ukraine, and claimed that,
through network manipulations and psychotechnologies, the new regime has transformed Ukraine from a state into a totalitarian hypersect.
Ukraine, the whole country, is just one new cult.
This is an absolutely anti-Christian, absolutely anti-Orthodox political regime.
Additionally, back in 2014, on the website of the Missionary Department of the Novosibirsk Diocese chaired by the aforementioned Alexander Novopashin, an article was posted containing the following statements.
I just want to draw attention to one charming circumstance, namely the principle of Ukrainian-like state organization almost completely coincides with the principle of organizing a totalitarian sect or destructive cult. Meanwhile, for people who found themselves in a cult and once swallowed the cultist lie, this lie becomes a norm. Cultists not only lie to themselves and others, but they also stop perceiving any opinion different from the one imposed on them by the cult. Therefore, simply talking, persuading, or proving is a useless and thankless task. We must remember that the war in Ukraine isn't for territories. The war is for souls, and it will continue in one form or another until activities of the cult are stopped.
All this rhetoric is aimed at instilling in the minds of Russians the idea that the current military conflict is not just a war, but a holy war.
It is clear that loving Ukraine, the Lord is now punishing it. And I'll repeat once again, in order to understand what is happening, you need to understand why the Lord is punishing Ukraine. Why exactly Ukraine? Ukrainians now hate Russians because Russians are merely God's tool. It's like a belt with which a father punishes his child. It's a holy war. It's a war for what we believe in. So I wouldn't be surprised if calls are voiced in churches and mosques.
The rhetoric of a holy war is necessary for the state to justify its aggressive actions, in order to make people believe that their country and they themselves are fulfilling some sacred duty. The purpose of these narratives is to convince the public that a war leading to the destruction of the victim state, the deaths of countless people, and the destabilization of the entire democratic world is acceptable and even necessary. Most importantly, this global anti-cultism seeks to divert citizens' attention from how their own country, which initiated this war, is turning into a totalitarian state.
In Ukraine, the disease is so advanced that it's no longer possible to cure it with any persuasion, negotiations, or anything like that. Only surgery is possible there. So the only response to those Nazi speeches may be the Sonsepek weapon. It should all be burned down, absolutely. Someone may tell me, oh, that's not a Christian way. It is quite Christian. It's just the ethics for those people. They position themselves as pagans, excuse me. So let them get what pagans should. Not the New Testament ethics is applicable there, but the Old Testament ethics, that of Elijah the prophet who himself cut the throats of 300 servants of Balaam. With these ones, we should do the same. Destroy them without any doubt. Just the Old Testament ethics, and they actually understand this language only. Be this vehicle sanctified. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Andre and I took holy water with us. I told all the brothers to lay out the machine guns, and we sanctified all the weapons. That is, we performed the rite of consecration. I drew a cross on my machine gun so that nobody would confuse that it's my cross, the priest's cross. It is my weapon, my sword.
Моя мама 18-го похоронила Берлера из этой войны.
Be these weapons, blessed and sanctified by sprinkled holy water.
Це Волчанська нема взагалі.
The final chord, which indicates the ultimate goal of a number of such rhetoric, is the statement of another Ratzer's leader, Archpriest Alexander Novopashin, who called Ukrainians cannibals.
For me, they are all cannibals. I called them so because I saw them like that. These inhumans spill human blood, the blood of children and women, our blood. They devour people's lives and feed on suffering. So who are they? Cannibals. And all those who committed terrorist attacks on our land, whom I listed earlier and whom I didn't name, are cannibals. It is useless to put cannibals in a cage. They'll still remain cannibals, even if you keep them there all their lives. Therefore, cannibals must be destroyed.
And these are the direct words of the leaders of Ratzers, Fekris, and their accomplices, which manifest xenophobia, incite interethnic and interreligious hatred, and encourage the deprivation of life based on national and religious identity. Just as the Nazis, under Hitler's regime, declared the Jewish nation to be non-humans with the support of anti-cultists of that era, today's modern anti-cultists label Ukrainians as a cult, in fact, calling for the destruction of an entire nation, which tantamount to genocide. This is not a coincidence, but a deliberate action.
What we are seeing now is a war, primarily a spiritual war because the Antichrist is attacking the Holy Rus, the Orthodox Christianity. I'd like to teach you to load cartridges correctly, so that the cartridges hit the target, precisely destroy the enemy, and not fly aimlessly in the air. Thus, Holy Fathers teach us this way. When you take a bullet, you load it, and say the following words: Holy Mother of God, save us. Holy Father Nicholas, pray to God for us. Holy Mother of God, save us. Holy Father Nicholas, pray to God for us. Holy Mother of God, save us. Holy Father Nicholas, pray to God for us. Tsar Nicholas II, pray to God for us.
What does the Bible say? You shall not kill.
Do not load a Grad rocket without prayer. For each of these, as you load it, say, Lord, have mercy, Lord, have mercy, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then, whoosh, boom.
Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said to your ancestors, you shall not kill, and whoever kills will be liable to judgment."
The Moscow Theological Seminary is fighting against NATO. Christ is risen.
Jesus said, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another."
If a person dies when fulfilling this duty, then he, undoubtedly, commits an act equivalent to sacrifice. He sacrifices himself for others. Therefore, we believe that this sacrifice washes away all the sins that this person has committed.
After everything you have seen, tell me, how should the public perceive these people? Representatives of Russia's front religion and their faithful anti-cultist proponents? Who are they in essence, when even at the highest level, the leadership of this organization, calling for hatred, violence, and killing, violates God's commandments just as the Nazis once did? When using the name of God, as the Nazis did in their time, they break Christ's commandments, justify sadism, and call for the destruction of peaceful, innocent people. Can this organization be called religious, let alone Christian? Can we consider them followers of Christ? Answer this now. Who is their God? And whom do they truly serve? You have just seen a small part of what is actually happening, and this is only the beginning. In labeling certain groups and individuals as cults and cultists, the ideological center of terrorist anti-cult gangs did not limit itself to specific organizations, citizens of their own country, and Ukrainian citizens whom they believe need to be destroyed. The anti-cultist narratives have long extended beyond Ukraine. Today, they have already labeled the United States, all of Europe, the entire Western democratic world as cults and have declared them to be Satanists.
in order for the world to live in God's way and not in a satanic way, since they've already built a big satanic village with and without us, where there is one starry striped boss who teaches everyone to live in a satanic way. The Ukrainian political regime is certainly terroristic, extremist, and misanthropic. It is Nazi. The Z sign denotes a world where there is no place for Nazism and Satanism. Ukraine is rapidly rolling downhill, according to the plans prepared by Western and American experts. The special operation on denazification is carried out not just to destroy the Hydra in its lair. We defend the whole Russian world. We defend our civilization. We defend Russia from this evil, from the anti-system. Because if we don't do that, this infection might spread very widely, like a cancerous tumor. There are no societies that have developed 100% immunity against it. We can see that in the West.
The complete denial of a human, faith, and traditional values. The suppression of freedom takes on the characteristics of an inverse religion, outright Satanism.
And the war is not yet lost. It is very important that our country, which relies on its centuries-old spiritual and cultural tradition, having formed its own code of moral values, be capable in some sense also of leading this resistance. I will say an incredible word now, against the Antichrist. Today, I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord. Adolf Hitler, 1925. Mein Kampf.
As you can see, the public actions of anti-cult organizations' representatives lead to tragic events that occur sometime after their information injections. The rhetoric of anti-cult organizations' representatives, besides being filled with manipulative techniques, contains numerous hidden meanings. Anti-cultists do not simply make public statements. They serve as the mouthpiece for the enemy of the democratic world, who openly announces its plans through them. Additionally, their statements exert a covert influence on authorities, providing them with directives for action. In announcing their future plans, the hidden orchestrators of the global anti-cult network have already designated the entire democratic world as their next target. And notably, it is the anti-cultists, as heralds of this covert force, who dictate the rhetoric that is later adopted by Russia's top leadership, including President Putin, who embodies authority for millions of Russian citizens. To understand what the hidden enemy has already prepared for each of you, listen carefully to what this person, echoed by President Putin, has to say.
But if the question, when will all this end, is asked of me as a priest, then my answer is never. Once Ukrainian Nazism is dealt with, another aggressor country will emerge through which the USA will begin to threaten Russia. So the civilizational war is inevitable.
As you heard, he explicitly said that a war for civilization is unavoidable. Do you know why he said that? He said it because he knew that both America and Europe would soon be mired in civil war. He said it because he is already chilling champagne to celebrate his victory. And this was said by a seemingly inconspicuous person, but he is one of the leaders of anti-cult organizations that are part of global anti-cultism, and he is echoed by President Putin himself. Now, here, any intelligent person would ask, who truly holds power in Russia?
Я не хочу, чтобы я умирала. Хочу, чтобы быстрее это все закончилось.